This video is made possible by our sponsors, AJA. We'd like to thank AJA for all their support and tell you to go to aja.com for all your production and post-production needs. Hi, I'm Gordon Burkell from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com, and of course, follow us on Instagram at filmmaker_u. Every week we interview a film professional and discuss their work, and this week I'm joined by Jo Willems, whose work includes Finch, Slumberland, and more recently, The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds, and Snakes, just to name a few. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
My question for you then is, because you worked on 3 previous Hunger Game films, what changed in how you approach this film?
I mean, the thing that we sort of changed a little bit as filmmakers, and obviously I've done so much work with Francis Lawrence over the years, and I did the 3 previous Hunger Games with him, and we actually started a little bit of a different style on a TV show we did for Apple TV, which was C with Jason Momoa, where we went for a very naturalistic style, but also we ended up shooting Alexa 65, which is large format, large, sort of, but particularly we started shooting with much wider lenses. We went, because the original Hunger Games we shot, well, not the first one, but Catching Fire, we ended up shooting on 35mm film, shot on anamorphic lenses to give it that kind of cinematic feel. But as we sort of over the years progressed our style, we went into digital, we kind of, and then we ended up shooting large format digital, and we always tried to get more and more intimate with the characters, and yeah, just ended up shooting wider and wider lenses. I think in style, that's sort of the biggest change between the other movies. They're still very much, at least I'd like to believe, grounded in reality. Even though they're sci-fi movies, I try and work in a naturalistic way. It's not all that kind of trying to keep the artifice away from the techniques that I use to portray these movies.
I've been a camera person for 30 years, and I fell in love with cinema. I heard there was free film school in France, and I wanted to get into the French film school. I really didn't know anything at the time, but I knew at least how to take pictures. So I said, I'll try for the image department. And then when I miraculously got into the French film school, I fell in love with working with the camera. You're following what's going to be in the movie. So that immediacy that the camera allows is what I loved from the beginning. I'm Kirsten Johnson, and this is my course about documentary cinematography.
So when you get on something, because it's like, these are like big, massive tentpole films. So yeah. When you get on a project like this, there's a lot of moving parts. So how do you make sure that you're working with the director and that their vision's going to be met, but you're also able to give your own sort of creative flair to it?
Yeah. I mean, the way I prep these movies now is I try and be, well, first of all, I do try and be working in a naturalistic way. That's my in an honest way and a respectful way to the story and kind of the characters. They're the most important thing. But I try and be inspired, first of all, by production design, locations, wardrobe. Which direction is that going? Because, for example, one of the main locations in a movie is the arena. How does that, when I walk in there, what do I end up, what do I need to do to make this look? And did you see the movie just as a?
No, because I didn't have a screen.
Anyway, you see in the trailer where there is, obviously there's a lot of VFX in this movie as well. So how do you keep that, naturalistic, and how do you keep that, from not looking all artificial? So that becomes like also a collaboration with the VFX department, where we're like, hey, we want to shoot this all handheld, or we want to do a lot of movement, we want to shoot wide lenses, but I also need to light it. So can I put lights in the shot? Can I just hang stuff to, and there's night interiors in that location that's lit by moonlight. You got to put light somewhere. So then it becomes like, okay, how can I make that work that it still looks, because moonlight is always a sort of a thing that to make that look naturalistic. How does that work? Because I mean, you can be outside at night and you can see stuff, but it's sort of a naturalism and realism that's, still trying to, to be dramatic with the imagery. That's kind of my key. But yeah, it's really trying to work with all the departments, and then they are big tentpole movies with a lot of cast and a lot of, but I just, it's kind of like, eating an elephant with a small spoon.
Well, I did watch Slumberland, which is also very VFX heavy.
Yeah.
And so, how do you, like, when I think about Slumberland, it feels like a lot of it's taking place in at least partially in sound stages. Like I think about the bed running down the street in Toronto, and it's, obviously you're going to shoot the plates, but then like a lot of it's going to be in green screen and what have you. So how do you get a naturalistic look in something like that?
I mean, obviously Slumberland is a little bit different because that's sort of set in a dream world that actually was a canvas for, you could be much more working in a, I wouldn't say artificial is not the world, but much more sort of fantasy world, we had a lot more freedom. While in something like Hunger Games, I try and make and look all those VFX as real as possible. If the audience starts to feel, no, that feels fake, or that's just like, there's no people that are flying, there's no people that have superpowers, there's no spaceships, there's none of that stuff, even though there is a lot of VFX in these movies. So you have to try and be, make these things look as real as possible. And that is important with VFX, and it's important with my job and how you light it, that it doesn't suddenly feel like, ooh, it feels a little, garish or doesn't feel real. I think that's the success with these movies, that, these people feel real. It's not like, and they are franchise movies or it's a series, but I try and keep it to the people,
Yeah.
And also we went a little grittier in these movies, like the games. They are gritty. They're kind of, there's a lot of dust. There's a lot of, these people, they don't have showers. They don't have to, they just like thrown in this arena. And it just felt really authentic.
So is there a scene in the new Hunger Games that you're really proud of how it came together and worked out?
Yeah, I think the arena is actually one of the, as a whole sort of movie, collaboration is probably our most successful sort of space. I also like shooting in very natural light, so there's a large part of the movie where you end up in all these natural landscapes that I think they look stunning as well, just like shooting in natural daylight and just finding the right frames and the nice contrast. That's also, it was super fun to do.
Now, how did you work with the colorists? Like, did you guys develop LUTs beforehand and create a look beforehand, or did you guys figure it out in post?
Yeah, we did have a LUT that we sort of used. I kind of said I wanted to be a little bit gritty, a little bit desaturated, but then at times, I also need to still be able to access all the color, the full color. It was a film emulation LUT. So always try and find that contrast with digital. But then once we were in the coloring suite, we kind of pushed ourselves more than in the other movies, actually.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot more. There's definitely 3 different areas of, like, you have the districts, you have the capital, and then you have all the nature stuff. And there's definitely more color in this movie than I originally had in my mind before I actually entered the coloring sessions, but it had to do with locations. It had to do with also wardrobe. I wanted all of that stuff to play its part. If you suddenly go and change things too much, and these, they're important elements. So if I suddenly say, "Oh, right, I'm going to make this look like a black and white movie," the production design, nor wardrobe, nor the costumes don't come to their right. They don't.
Yeah, it's
But definitely, there's I didn't want to, like, the whole movie doesn't look like it. There's definitely like, okay, this scene, let's go a little warmer with this as an interior. Let's push it. It's an early dawn scene. Let's just push it. Let's make it like a little cyan or a little. So we definitely pushed more than the other movies. The other movies I feel have more of a, and I'm not going to say even, not that this movie is uneven, I don't feel, but each scene could play its own color a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and what I was going to say is what's interesting is, like, I like if you were shooting back in the late 90s, early 2000s, we had to use, we had basically the color correction was basically a light system.
Yeah.
Whereas nowadays it's like you can do matte boxes, you can do all this crazy stuff. So do you prefer to get it more flat on the set and finish it in color, or do you prefer to try and get as much in on set and then adjust it in post?
I try and get as much as I can on set, particularly in terms of contrast. And I do have on-set coloring. I find it, I can get closer to what it's going to be afterwards. I can push myself a little bit more rather than I use one LUT for the whole movie. Because VFX prefers it that way. It's easier for dailies. It's easier for a lot of reasons. I know some people, they walk around with 20 LUTs and every scene is something else and they prep all that stuff. I don't work that way. I have one LUT that I use for the whole movie, and I can tweak contrast and color as I go along. But I do it on set, and I try and get reasonably close to what it's going to be. Sometimes you sort of veer off to a certain, and because you make quick decisions. It's all instinct on set. So sometimes you're like, I'm not sure why I went in that direction. Sometimes you have to sort of bring yourself back a little bit, and at the end of the day, like, you can correct yourself a little bit and go back to where it needs to be.
So you had the one LUT and you're capturing mostly on set, but is there a would you say there is a lighting arc to the story? Like, does it change throughout, or did you try to keep it more even?
It's not really an arc as such. I think this was more treated like, how does it work? I mean, some of the lighting has an arc, like in some of the environments have the lighting has meaning, or you want to express a certain idea or a certain grit. But it wasn't like, it was like an arc, like from start to finish. It's more like, oh, well, this particular scene is played, and it's more per scene. It wasn't necessarily like, oh, the whole. Obviously, the Capitol has a particular look because it's a little more saturated and it's more of a stern kind of lighting, while all of the district stuff, there's a warmth and a certain nostalgia to it and a certain warmth, and I always try and make that feel a little bit more of a, even though it's gritty and it's dark at times, but certain elements, like there's some scenes, and they're in the trailer where they're dancing in this sort of it's not a bar necessarily, but a meeting place, like where there's music played and people can, like a gathering space, and we went very warm with that, and it's very kind of painterly and very much a space where you'd want to be.
Interesting. Now, did you read the books and find anything in there that influenced the lighting, or did you because I've met some people who are like, I don't touch the books, I want to create my own feeling to this?
No, I read the book just to be informed, and like, because scripts, they sort of veer slightly from the book sometimes, and I thought it was important to read the book. But don't really took it as an inspiration for lighting or camera or angles or anything like that. I think my inspiration really starts with locations, and then whatever comes instinctually to me is like how I want these movies to feel.
Now,
I think that's what, that's the job of a DP as well, not to read too much in it. Like you should bring your own thing and your own feeling to it. And otherwise you might just, if you're following too much or led by, same with references. I look at stuff, but I don't copy stuff to, because every logistics are different, locations are different. So I try and once you start shooting, the movie finds its own way as well. Like you start, that you have certain ideas and a plan, but you have to be able to adjust while you're on set as well.
One question I like to ask cinematographers is, when I talk to them, they tend to have a very large knowledge or a large amount of knowledge about photographers and painters and all these different artists. Is there a particular painter or artist that you turn to for inspiration just in your personal work?
I mean, I think you're inspired by everything that you have seen up until today, right? So I can be inspired by movies that I've seen when I was 12 years old, and these things are all in that is who you are. That's your own personality. That's how you form your taste. That's how you form so I wouldn't say there's any really specific people. I mean, I have I like a lot of different art. I like a lot of different movies, a lot of different styles. So it depends a little bit on the project to add what do I take inspiration from. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to like go, oh, those guys I go to every time, I mean, there is certain filmmakers that I love, but yeah, it's really, I mean, I've seen thousands of movies. I've been, and there's a lot of things that truly inspire me, but I wouldn't want to be specific about it. I think it's really, that's who you are. It's all those things that are poured in you.
Interesting. Well, I have one last question for you. What would you say is your favorite guilty pleasure film or TV show to watch?
I mean, funny enough, right now, my daughter, who's 16, she loves Grey's Anatomy. And there is actually, she watches, she started it again, and I'm like, so she's watching it, and sometimes I'm like, yeah, I'm watching with her because it's super fun. She's 16, and it's like, so I'd say that's definitely a bit of a guilty pleasure.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for letting me interview you today.
Okay, well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks. And that's it for this week, everyone. Make sure to check us out at filmmakeru.com. I'm Gordon Burkell. Thanks for watching. This video is made possible by our sponsors, AJA. We'd like to thank AJA for all their support and tell you to go to AJA.com for all your production and post-production needs.